Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy, Jarrell Mason, better known as Jay Mason, and welcome to Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a group that burst onto the scene in 1995 with their cover of the Q Sakamoto, popularized by Taste of Honey, Sukiyaki, which went top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, and they set out to tour such countries such as Asia, Japan, Australia, US, Canada, Lay Down Your Love, their sophomore single, which was hitting, and they formed out of Baltimore, Maryland. Shout out to everybody in the DMV. I have my guys, Larry, Roberto, and Ray, better known as 4 p.m. Fellas, welcome to Beyond the Album Cover.
What's up? What's up?
How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing?
How's everybody doing out there?
All right. I believe I did
Thanks
that intro.
for having us.
Oh, no problem, man. I believe I did that intro well. Can I be a part of the group? I mean, you guys can turn my mic off and have me far off left to the center of the stage, lip syncing or something. You know, I may have two left feet,
man,
but
listen, Marty's no longer with us, man. So we do okay with having that fourth harmony in the
we
mix.
need that fourth harmony.
Yeah, just write me a speaking part in there, and I'm good to go.
All right.
Yeah, definitely a pleasure to have you. Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to have you guys on. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. How did 4 p.m. form? Anybody can take this question.
I appreciate it.
Well, people might not know, but Ray and I are brothers. So we actually grew up, as kids in the Bronx, New York. That's where we were raised. And years later, we met Larry in Maryland, in the Maryland area. Our father was military, so he was based in Aberdeen, Maryland. And slowly but surely, we all relocated, met Larry and Marty. At the time, Ray, Larry, and Marty, they formed a breakdancing group.
Ooh, we was breakdancing.
Yeah, breakdancing. So that evolved when I moved to Maryland. I continued what Ray and I had started back in the Bronx, which was a couple of different variations of singing groups. Actually, we started rapping. When we met Marty and Larry, we got them to join us and practice with us and write with us. And the group For Real was born. Then we had to change our name, and 4 p.m. was born. 4 Positive Music.
That's it in a nutshell.
That happened back with around 1991 is when 4 p.m. was actually formed as a group, with that name.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Right. Yeah, so Roberto, you mentioned that you and Ray guys are originally from up top. So what was that like coming down south and bringing everything that was coming from New York hip-hop wise? Because back during that time, this was pre-internet. So you really weren't aware of what other parts of the country were doing rap scene wise. And what was that like coming down like, oh, you guys ain't heard so-and-so by such and such? Because I know those New York mixtapes went for a high premium the further south you went. And anybody could grab this question.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that because I came out to Maryland before. And the story goes, I mean, it really, but years later, a lot of people from it would tell me that our family kind of brought the culture legendary in that sense that, when we came down, there was a lot of things that were not really popping off. I mean, there were some people that were break dancing, some people that were rapping, but we brought a kind of a more authentic piece of that culture that was born in the Bronx in New York and brought it down to the area. And we're actually pretty well known and remembered in the Maryland area for having done that, in the Harford County area of Maryland.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So also being in Maryland, I'm sure that Go-Go had to kind of touch that since you guys are close to DC as well, right?
Oh yeah. Well, we listen to all that. I did too, especially. I mean, Trouble Funk. Oh my God, that was the stuff back then. You know, that go-go music was hot back then. You know what I mean? And it's still doing its thing, but it was just real big back in the late 80s and early 90s. It was very big.
Yeah.
Oh, this whole area. So we grew up on that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with go-go. So I'm gonna give you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you guys.
And I remember the kids in the streets, you know, with the cans, with the buckets and the cans all over to them playing, you know, that go-go music.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of backstory about Chuck Brown, the godfather of go-go. So Chuck Brown was born in my hometown in North Carolina before he ended up moving to DC. And with my area of North Carolina being about a 4-hour drive from DC, we got that go-go flair all of the time. But I think the first person to really put it on wax to make it known outside of DMV was Herbie Lovebug Azor, the man behind Salt and Pepper. And play. Yeah. So I want to give a shout out to Salt and Pepper, who just got their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Big ups for that. And you guys were signed to Next Plateau. Salt and Pepper was your label mates, in addition with Sybil, Ultramagnetic MCs. Now, were there any other labels that were in the bidding war besides Next Plateau to sign you guys?
We actually, we actually ended up in the offices of quite a few record companies. I think we auditioned for Sony, for
EMI.
Capitol, EMI.
Yeah.
And when we met with Next Plateau, they were a smaller label that was being distributed by a bigger conglomerate. At the time, it just felt like a better relationship. You know, they were smaller. They were paying close attention to the individual artists. And we felt that we didn't want to get lost in the sauce of a big company that had, 30, 40, 50 artists, and we wouldn't get that, close-knit attention. And I think for the most part, the people that we worked with at Next Plateau were backing us. I mean, they were pushing our song on radio. They had us doing in-store signings. They had us doing drops for radio stations. And, slowly but surely, all that hard work paid off. And next thing you know, we, certified gold here, as you mentioned. Our very first show was somewhere, I don't remember if it was San Antonio or Port Arthur, Texas, but the first time we hit a stage at a festival in Texas, by the time we got to the hook of the song, the whole crowd of 10,000 people was singing, "It's all because of you." And we were like, wow, so Next Plateau really did take care of us.
Now, who are some of your musical influences? Who are you guys listening to? Were you guys bumping Guy, New Edition, Truth, TKA?
All of that. We listen to all of that, man. From Prince to Michael Jackson. Oh, I mean, you just name it. I have a big range of artists that I listen to, so, and that I grew up on. So, it was just they are in us. You know what I mean? That was just something that we listened to.
Yeah, I think for me, and maybe I might be speaking for Bob a little bit here too, but we even there's a lot of cross-genre material and groups that we were into, that go even further back, like the Bee Gees. We're big fans of the Bee Gees. When we were coming up, we were a lot younger, and the Hall & Oates was one of my favorite bands. So there's a little bit of influence even in my voice, to the lead singer from Hall & Oates.
Phil Collins, oh man,
Phil Collins, guys like that. So we're fans of really multiple genres of music, and I think that if you listen to our stuff, you'll find that some of the influence in our music of these cross genres is not just R&B. There's a lot of pop in there. There's a lot of early popular music, stuff from the Motown era. You'll hear a little bit of that flavor in there. So quite a few different artists.
Yeah.
Definitely runs the gamut. So what was it like performing in the talent show circuit around Maryland, really honing your craft before you guys got your deal? And did you feel that going through that grind served you guys well once you hit the big stage?
Oh yeah. That it definitely did that, because there were, we started out a cappella because we didn't have anybody to produce for us.
Right.
And we producers ourselves. So we said, let's just start, doing these things a cappella. So we learned how to do a cappella. And it actually helped us because we were doing a show, I think it was San Diego, when at that time, I think we were using ADATs and the tape broke. And we were on stage and we just went right into our a cappella and the crowd thought it was all part of the show. So, it definitely helped us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was the go-to a cappella song that you would go to?
Oh, man.
We had a number of them.
Yeah, we have few of them.
Yeah,
We like Larry said, since we were primarily at that, I mean, when the group was born, we started off writing and arranging our songs a cappella because, like you said, we didn't have instrumentation, so we were able to just kind of 1, 2, 3 and into any song we wanted to in those days, So we had a lot of originals. I think some of our favorites were probably Forward More, which was on the first album, as far as a cappella songs go. Then Came You was also, I think, on the first album, on the overseas version of the album, at least one of them. But we had that song that we would do a lot. And then, believe it or not, man, we used to cover a lot of standards, like In the Still of the Night, which I think was recorded also by Awful One at one point. Didn't they do that? They recorded that? So in Love. So in Love. They did that. And we would sing songs like that, a cappella. So in Love, In the Still of the Night, Under the Boardwalk, which
Shy,
is a classic.
We did a song by Shy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We did that one. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure probably some Foursome D's was up in there somewhere too.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. You can't forget about the Foursome D's.
Yeah, so most people don't know Foursome D's originally was the Force MCs with the late DJ Dr. Shock, and that they were the first group to merge doo-wop and hip-hop, and every group that came after them owes it to the Foursome D's.
Yes.
And what
Let me tell you, the Force MDs
and Tom Silverman did at Tommy Boy with them.
Yeah, the Force MDs are definitely pioneers. Bobby and I used to see Force MDs live in the Bronx before they even put records out. As the Force MCs. Yeah. We would actually roll up at parties in the Bronx and see those guys on the stage doing their thing. So we got a chance to witness that live, when we were coming up in the Bronx.
That's dope. Yeah. And I wonder, with you guys originally come from the Bronx, did you ever go to any of the old school hip hop haunts like Disco Fever, Tunnel, Latin Quarters?
Every one of them.
Absolutely, yes.
Every one of the ones that you mentioned and more. They were little spots on Tremont. They had the Devil's Nest that came up. There was a lot of cool spots, and we would see like DJ Scott LaRock, KRS-One. And these guys just performing live. I mean, this was before anybody made records. Before Rappers Delight came out, we were watching all these cats live on stage doing their thing. The Treacherous Three, the Awesome Foursome, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. I mean, there was a bunch of them that we got a chance to see live before they put records out.
Did you see African Bambaataa?
African Bambaataa, yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, it actually went to before the clubs were really popping. We used to catch all these cats in the schoolyards when the DJs would come out with 40 speakers, 38 crates of records, and just going at it, and we would see all this talent just flourishing all throughout the Bronx. Yeah.
And I wonder, for Roberto and Wade, since you guys are from the Bronx, were you team Juice Crew or team BDP?
Oh, BDP, absolutely.
BDP all the way, man.
Yeah, because as the story goes, I believe KRS-One tried to play South Bronx on another record for the late Mr. Magic. Mr. Magic wasn't feeling it. Then they went and created South Bronx, and then somehow it got a hold of Red Alert, I believe, at the Latin Quarters, and Red Alert just had to keep running that record back because it just stirred up such a frenzy because of that borough pride.
Right.
That's it, man. Absolutely. That's it. I mean, if anybody knows, in New York, there was always the rivalries between the boroughs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you always had one borough trying to out-top the other one. So when that South Bronx came out, that anthem right there had everybody in the Bronx just going crazy.
And speaking of the boroughs, I want to talk about this one gentleman, hails from Harlem. This man forever changed the sound of R&B, meshing hip-hop and R&B. Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, The Show, Lottie Dottie, went on to
Absolutely.
produce Keith Sweat's Make It Last Forever, Guy's
Wow.
self-titled debut album. We can go down the list about this man. So
Oh,
can you all talk about what was it like the first time you guys heard Teddy Riley's production and the merging of hip hop with R&B, which gave birth to what we now know as New Jack Swing?
Oh,
whew.
I got one little phrase to say. Yep.
yep.
That was Teddy Riley's signature. Yeah, man. Teddy Riley did big things for the whole music scene. I mean, everything that he touched was just like magic. It had the melodic flow as far as the vocals went. The beats were killer, and just one of the greatest to ever do it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know. I was impressed with them, man. I love them. All of that. We grew up on that. Man. That was our era. You know what I mean? That's all we listened to was all that good stuff back then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, whose idea, fast forwarding, whose idea was it to cover Sukiyaki? Because like I stated earlier, it was originally done by Q Sakamoto, became famous here in America through A Taste of Honey. It was incorporated in Lottie Dottie. So whose idea was it to cover Sukiyaki, and it became a crossover smash over here in America?
I would say the record company, because they asked
company. Yeah,
that was Eddie O'Loughlin. I think came up with that idea.
Yeah.
He presented it to us, and we were like, at first I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, because I wasn't sure. But then when he said Slick Rick, I know what melody you're talking about. So it all came. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the song obviously had such a history. I mean, you know, it dates all the way back to 1963. And like you mentioned, Taste of Honey did the first English version of that song. Slick Rick had a piece of it in there. I think Snoop Dogg did a piece of it in a song that he did. Mary J. Blige did a line of it in a song that she did. I mean, so that song has such a rich history. And we're just honored to have been a part of that long history.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you surprised at the reaction to the song hitting so well in the US and overseas? And then what was the next step for Next Plateau once they saw that Sukiyaki was a big pop hit?
Oh, absolutely. We were surprised. I for one, kind of questioned the whole idea of doing the song, because, you know, we were writing, we had a bunch of songs in the archives, and we were trying to say, okay, well, let's produce this one. They're like, no, we have an idea for you. We want you to do this song Sukiyaki as your first single. And we were kind of like throwing it back from it. But once it's, like I said, once it started climbing the charts and playing all over radio stations, it was like, wow. I mean, he definitely had a ear and a sense for what would make it in popular music. Once it started climbing the charts and getting all this attention, the first thing they did is say, okay, we got the first single, we need an album. And they threw us in the studio, and we recorded our debut album, Now's the Time, in 21 days.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
we just slept in the studio, man, and like, you know, had to send somebody out for pizza, and you know, it was just it was a grueling schedule, man.
You know what I mean? It was terrible. It was terrible.
I mean, but nothing like the present time to capitalize on the momentum, because when I talked with KT from Color Me Bad, they had the same experience, because when I Want to Sex You Up blew up, people were only buying the single and not the soundtrack. And Cassandra Mills, who was head at Giant, was like, yo, you guys gotta get in the studio, record an album. You guys are white hot. So it's kind of like the same aspect with you all, was like, singles white hot, let's capitalize, get in the studio, let's record.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny that you mentioned that, because we're in that same mode now. We're getting a lot of great feedback on our first single, which is not coming out until December 16th. Will be available for pre-sale on November 28th. But because we're getting such a good feedback on that single, and we're the label, right? We got to make sure that we have a full LP, you know, ready to roll. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that we're actually going through the same experience now. You know what I mean?
Now I was wondering, who are some of the acts that you guys got to tour with? Did you guys do shows with All For One,
Oh,
Color Me Bad, Boys of
oh, man.
Paradise, Barrio Boys?
Man, we shared the stage with a lot of people. We shared the
Yeah, we
stage
do.
with
Actually,
Brandy,
yeah,
Usher. We shared the
yeah.
great stage with we
The
even
food,
rap Naughty by
yeah.
Nature. I mean,
MC Hammer,
MC Hammer. It was crazy.
the Fugees, Mary J. Blige, Montel Jordan.
Oh man,
I mean, that list it goes so deep. There's a lot of people I don't remember. Bob, you can mention some.
Yeah, it was cool because we did a lot of the here in the US when we were touring here, we did a lot of the festivals. And
Yeah.
fortunately for us, the festivals were a good mixture of genres. So like Larry mentioned, there were rap artists, there were R&B artists, there were
Right.
pop artists. So we were, we were on the ticket with a lot of the groups. Our US presence though, once the record really hit big, Japan was wondering, okay, why is Sukiyaki all of a sudden a big thing in the US again, after so many years, and who is this group of guys that brought it out? So Japan requested us to go out there and tour. So the record company sent us to Japan. We went to Japan, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Singapore, Australia. We went on this whole worldwide thing while the record was, like you said, white hot. And then once we came back, as you know, the US was already, okay, that record was good for a minute, but now it's on to the next. So we kind of lost an opportunity to really, do the talk show circuit and sing the song at some of the award shows and all that stuff. So there was a window of opportunity that unfortunately, it was, there was a balance. Either stay here and reap those benefits or go and perform for the world and reap those benefits.
So performing internationally, what was that experience like going over there? Because I know when I look at the K-pop movement with BTS and all those acts coming out of there, it's pretty much just their take on US R&B. Even when you go back to Seo Tajin and Boys and I Know, that whole record, that whole style was pretty much US R&B based.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That Western influence has been going on in Asia for as long as we can remember. I mean, it's funny when we started touring Japan in the early days. I mean, I was surprised to find how many like hip hoppers were out there. You know what I mean? Like it was a shock to us. But I mean, these kids were dressed up with Kangos and Adidas and this retro kind of like Run DMC look, you know what I'm saying? That I didn't expect to find out there.
They had afros.
They had afros, and we were like, "Well, wait a minute, what's going on here?"
We were
but
shocked.
there's such a powerful Western influence out there that I think most people here in the U.S. don't even understand it. I mean, and it's one thing to see it on TV and see it on stages, man, but when you're there and you walk through the town of Tokyo or Osaka or Nagoya, and you see these kids actually dressed like that, man, you're like, wow, it's amazing influence that we got on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would run up to somebody thinking it was a brother with a backpack on, and I tap him. He turn around, he's Japanese, and I'm like, oh, my bad.
Yeah, that just goes to show you how the U.S. is the greatest export of culture. Now, what would you say would be the main difference in touring the U.S. market than the international market? I know you mentioned earlier when you guys were touring the US, you guys are on the festival bills, but what was that like touring internationally? And what would you say was the main difference between the two different markets?
Internationally, we were fortunate that most of the shows that we were booked on were exclusive 4 p.m. for Positive Music shows. Yeah. So we were showcased at dinner theaters and even festivals. We just pulled up some old video footage back in 1997 in Asahikawa, Japan, where we've got a crowd of, I don't know, 15, 20,000 people, in a big old field. There's a stage, and we were the show.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean? We were the main act, and it was kind of odd to us because we traveled with a band at one point, but this particular festival, we did a track show, but yet it was all these people, and we were like, well, why didn't they let us bring the band? You know what I mean?
right,
But
right.
Right.
they enjoyed it. We had a good time, but they received us so well over there. We actually, in the course of a decade, from 1995 that Sukiyaki hit 8 on the Billboard charts, to 2003 when we did our last live performance in Japan. We traveled to Japan and every major city in that country over 30 times.
Man, that's crazy. That just showed you that you guys were well received in that market. Now, Sukiyaki, big hit. How did Lay Down Your Love come about to be the follow-up single after Sukiyaki?
I think that Lay Down, you know, after we recorded it, I mean, it was definitely known that that was going to be a successful record just based on the feel. It was a feel good song, nice R&B, you know, track. And the record label and us, I think collectively decided that, you know what, that should be the second one to go out after Sukiyaki. I mean, it just felt right, you know. And so when it got released, I mean, it got immediate attention. The video was a great video. We shot that in New York, in Soho, I believe, in a studio by a man named Paul Hunter, who was a great video director. And so I think the visual side of the song also really helped gain a wider audience for the song. And you know, it didn't fare as well as Sukiyaki, but it did spend a little bit of time on the chart. And it's funny because here we are years later, and I don't know, Bob and Larry, you feel the same, but we're getting a lot of people telling us now, man, that song Lay Down Your Love was my favorite. You know, so you know, you don't hear these things along the years, but like on current day, we're finding out that, man, people were big, huge fans of Lay Down Your Love, a lot more than we even knew.
Mm-hmm,
well, what was strange too was we go to a lot of the radio stations, and you know, we do the interviews with the radio stations, and some of the stations were actually curious because they said, they were like, why didn't you guys release Time Clock of the Heart
Right.
which was the remake? And we were like, well, the record company wanted to release this song, so that was a song that could have done well for us too, and it was more up tempo. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that song.
Yeah, you gotta love those industry politics where artists may have one idea of, hey, I want this to be the lead off or the second single, but they're like, no, this is gonna be your lead off, this is gonna be your second single, kind of having the map already laid out. So did you guys have any battles with Next Plateau as far as taking more direction in terms of career, saying we want it to be in our hands as opposed to already having it canned and you telling us what to do?
Unfortunately, I think we were too young to really you know, kind of stand up for ourselves and have that battle. You know, we had a few small little tiffs, but we never really had the discussion of having the creative control that we would like to have had at the time. And because of that, there were a lot of missed opportunity. Like Bob said earlier, you know, we were touring Asia when our song was in the top 10. You know, we should have been here in the US doing back then, what was it? You know, you had the David Letterman show and Jay Leno and all these big, you know, daytime talk shows, Good Morning America. That's where we should have been while we were in the top 10. But the label felt that we should have been in Asia. Had we had more creative control, we knew where we were supposed to be, and we were saying it. But I guess our voices weren't loud enough to be able to convince the powers that be that we should have been here. We got an offer to be on to be an opening act for Luther Vandross. You know, we got a call from his people, and everybody knows Luther was, you know, one of the big singing sensations during that time. And we would have loved to be an opening act for him, but our label thought we were too young to be on the road with him at the time and turned it down. You know, like we didn't even have a chance to say yes or no.
We found out after the fact. Yeah,
we found out after the fact. You know, so definitely we felt the sting of not being able to have that control. And so again, and I'm not to fast forward, but we understood that this time around, since we're ready to go back out and do it again, we had to have that creative control. And so we positioned ourselves to be the label, to put this new music out independently and to be able to make those decisions for ourselves.
Right. And how old were you guys at the time when Sukiyaki and Lay Down was at its height?
I was the youngest. I was 25, I want to say. We weren't teenagers. I mean,
I
we
think it was
were kind of mid
27,
20s.
maybe 20. Yeah,
Yeah,
27, 20.
we were a little older than like Boys to Men and the All for Ones when they came out. They were a little younger than we were,
Yeah.
but we were still young. I mean, you know, even in your 20s, you're still kind of
But we
young,
were
you
new
know.
in the
So
game. We were new in the game. We didn't really
yeah,
understand the music business part
Right.
of the music industry. We
right,
just were performers and singers and entertainers, and we
right,
didn't really understand the behind the scenes. And that's what
right,
kind of got.
I think
yeah,
I think at one point the four of us, discussed the little disagreements that we would have with the label and the management and the production team, whatever those were. We kind of chalked it up to, all right, this is our first time out here. These are the dues that we have to pay. Let's go off on the success of Sukiyaki. Let's get another record to hit, and then once we go into the second album, we can renegotiate, get better terms, have a little bit more creative, decision making. And it kind of started to work that way because we actually did negotiate a better deal for the second album. We had a little bit more
creative
creative
license.
decision making in the second album,
More
but
control.
then the record labels, Next Plateau and its parent company, they started beefing with amongst themselves, and then we just got lost in that whole
Oh, yeah, we got lost in
battle.
politics. Yeah, we got lost
So
in that.
the whole thing just kind of melted on us during the label friction. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you guys pretty much got caught in the middle of all of that.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
Mm, yeah,
it wasn't long after that we ended up parting ways with the label. You know, we got an entertainment lawyer to help sever those contracts, and we went kind of on our own after that, after the second album.
So were there any other major labels that were interested after you guys left Next Plateau, or after that you guys kind of were like, we don't want to do the major thing anymore, let's try and go indie?
That was the feeling. Absolutely. We didn't want to make the same mistake twice.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
so we went on to record our third release, which really didn't fare that well, but it was an experiment. Like, we put the album out on our own label, similar to what we're doing now, but without the experience that we have now. And so that didn't do too well. And then we eventually signed a deal with a Japanese company called Polydor Records, just
Pony
for
Canyon, right?
Pony
a
Canyon.
single
Pony Canyon.
album
Pony
deal
Canyon. Yeah.
called Sweet Soul, and we ended up that was released just in the Asian market. So that was the fourth album that we did, but most people in the U.S. don't even know about Sweet Soul.
Is one of those albums that you could probably only get on an import. You're gonna pay a lot of money
Right.
for an import.
A lot of money.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna tell you that.
A lot of money.
I was wondering, was there ever one group that was out during your time period that you wish had bigger success, but for reasons or another, the record didn't translate to the market, or they just came out too early?
Oh yeah, there was one group we were out touring with called Boys of Paradise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, them boys low, man. Them boys,
Amazing.
they weren't no
Yeah.
joke. But I think what it was the people just weren't receptive to them, because when they finally met them, they were like, oh, it's them. Because I think
Right.
most of the guys were like either Filipino, Guamanian, or something like that.
Hawaiian.
And they were singing R&B, and they were like, well, and they had
Yeah.
long jet black hair, and they were like, who are these? Is that the
Right.
same? Are those the guys? So I kind of felt like, man, that they didn't they got a raw deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe they were signed to Ice-T's label. They covered the Manhattan Shining Star, and then
Yeah.
had Runaround as
Yeah.
their second single. They were definitely a dope group,
Yeah.
but the one group that I felt should have blown up in the US, they had some success in the Spanish language market, but I felt they came out 2 to 3 years too early in the US before the Latin explosion, and that was Barrio Boys.
Yeah,
Oh,
Barrio
Oh,
Boys was good.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Barrio Boys was very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there was the couple of groups that come to my mind are a group called there's a few. One's called what was called Into You.
Oh
They
yeah.
had-
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah, they had a really
Yeah.
nice song. And then there was another group called Portrait, you know, that came out with I think they did a Bee Gees cover that was really nice. You remember that, Bob?
Was it How Deep?
How deep is your love?
Yeah.
They did a really nice rendition of How Deep Is Your
Yep.
Love. So there were, I mean, there was a lot of really good groups, man, that just kind of, unfortunately, the one hit wonder. We kind of fell into that ship too. But there's a lot of them that we actually got a chance to share stages with that, unfortunately didn't get a chance to create or claim that household name title that most of us wanted back then. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, because back to Barrio Boys, I had a chance to interview Joe Jacket, who put them together. He was with New Kids on the Blocks camp, and he talked to Maurice Starr and was like, "Hey, how do you do this?" Like, I want to do a group too. It's like, okay, same formula like New Kids, but get guys that can do English and Spanish. And I don't know if you guys were familiar with Nestor Velasquez.
No.
He had a single out on Uptown back in around 92, never released the album, but originally he was supposed to be a member of Barrio Boys. But I just look at that time period when you guys were out and all these other groups. What made that period special to where you had all these groups? You had you guys, you had New Flavor, you had No Question, Old School, Souls of Theory. I mean, what was it about that period that made groups just really pop?
I think for us, well, for me, I've always been a fan of harmonies and lyrics. Ray and Larry are known for sharing lead songs on all of our projects. I'm mostly in the background, with my pen or a tablet, trying to tell a story. And then I'll present it to the guys and say, okay, I think this will make a good song, and then we'll work on it and bring that song to life. So I think at that period of time, all the groups were emulating, the cats from back in the days that, we grew up on.
Yeah.
The OJs, the Stylistics, the Manhattans, the Four Tops. I mean, that whole, where there was a 4-man, five-part harmony, we were all emulating that style. And so at that period, they say everything comes around in circles.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, the harmony group with the steps, the choreography, the love songs and all that, it was just a remaking of that previous era. And, the time was right. We were there in that pocket, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier how the international market was very good to you guys, but also for US-based pop R&B acts, it was the testing ground before they ended up breaking in the US. Case in point, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. I know 98 Degrees debut album fared better over in Asia than the US. Personally, my favorite album. So what is it that you think is about that market that really received well those groups before they had their respective success here in America?
I just think they appreciate music so much overseas for some reason.
Yeah.
Once they're your fan, it seems like they're a fan for life.
There's more loyalty amongst the fans and the groups that they love. I think that, the U.S., and not to bash our country, but we become more so a country of what have you done for me lately? You know what I'm saying? You kind of here today, gone tomorrow. If you're not doing anything right now, then I don't need to know about you. Whereas if overseas, and especially we experience that in Asia, I mean, we have fans that have reached out to us over the years. Hey, how you guys doing? What are you up to? When are you coming back? That's one of the reasons why you see us doing this again today in our 50s, because our fans really kind of pulled us back in. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If it wasn't for our previous fans saying, hey, we really want more music, we certainly thank God that he kept us healthy and alive and well and with good voice to be able to do it. So that's a whole nother blessing in itself. But our fans, we credit them for being there over the years, those loyal fans that we've had, especially our Japanese fans and our Asian territory fans. I mean, they really have been asking for this for a long time. So
right,
it's kind of interesting that once we started working on this project, we had individuals research us on social media, you know, going back to our old videos and anything that was on the internet that had to do with 4 p.m. And they found that we are still receiving commentary, you know, at the time when we had the conversation, as early as 3 weeks prior. And this is 2022. 3 weeks prior, where somebody was commentating, oh yeah, 4 p.m. That was my favorite, you know, Now's the Time was my favorite album. I loved this song and I loved their rendition of Sukiyaki. And they were saying, you guys are continually trending. You know, there's still people, fans to this day, mentioning you guys and wondering where you're at. And, you know, can somebody in the record industry bring them back? You know what I mean? And it was it was fascinating for me. It was flattering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and with you guys, Helen, Foreman, and B More, I was curious, did you have any interactions with Dru Hill prior to their ascension, or you didn't cross paths with Dru Hill?
Just that one time in the before they came out with the records in the Chocolate Factory, I think was the only one I remember.
Right. The fudgery.
The fudgery.
Strangest thing, strangest thing that we never really shared the stage across the path. We would love to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Cisco probably was busting a flip somewhere in the back while making some chocolate fudge puddles or something like that. And
at that time, we were doing a cappella shows in the Inner Harbor, the amphitheater, and I think it was during the intermission of one of those shows, we went into the mall area to get some, you know, a snack, something to drink, and the fudgery was inside the mall.
Right.
And as we're getting out, you know, going to look at what we're gonna eat, you know, we hear this harmony coming from around the corner. So we go to see what it is, and there's a crowd over this stand, and sure enough, they were in the back there just flipping over the fudge, man, and just, you know, going to town and, you know, singing a song.
Yep. And then of course Dru Hill ended up popping, it ended up breaking. Now I want to shift back really quick because we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I believe if you are from New York and Miami, then you understand the impact of freestyle. But I want to talk about its influence and how it kind of paved the way for what we see now with reggaeton, Daddy Yankee, Bad Bunny, Don Omar, Luis Fonsi. List goes on and on. But you know, it wouldn't be none of that if it wasn't for TKA, Sweet Sensation, Cover Girls, man. Judy Torres, Expose, Lanier, George Lamond. The list goes on. So let's talk about its influence, freestyle.
Oh my goodness, man! Talk about its influence. I you know, probably one of the favorite eras for me at that time. I was actually just getting out into the clubs in New York, and so I got to see TKA and Cover Girls, Sweet Sensation, you know, live on stage. Expose, you know, at a lot of the clubs in Manhattan. Man. And so it was just an era where, I mean, that popped, especially for Latinos. You know, I mean, this was like almost like, even to this day, you know, you talk to a Latino from New York and they mention freestyle. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's like our signature music. You know, Bobby and I are both of Puerto Rican descent. You know, so our parents are both born, raised in Puerto Rico, and you know, we grew up in New York, so we consider ourselves New Yorkers. But that Latin freestyle music is in our blood. You know what I'm saying? And even though, matter of fact, some of our earliest stuff that we wrote, you know, we haven't recorded some of the songs, but you know, the stuff that especially Bob penned back in the day, they all have a very like a freestyle flavor to them.
Freestyle flavor.
It did.
You know what I'm saying? And so we never recorded a lot of that stuff, but I think one of these days some of them songs we're gonna have to get them out there.
We gotta mention Lisa, because Lisa started the production with full force. When One If I Take You Home, that really set it off for freestyle. For me personally, that record, and they got played on R&B radio because I can remember seeing Expose on BET, Video Soul, Soul Train, on Apollo. It was a lot of cross pollination with Latin music, R&B, with hip hop. And Ray, you mentioned that you and your brother Puerto Rican. Did you guys secretly want it to be in Menudo or no?
No, not at all.
Not really, not really. I mean, listen, I would love to have had their success. Don't get me wrong. But I think that our influences were always more sort of leaning, even though, like I said, we had a multi-genre influence. But when it came down to our craft, we were hip hop heads as kids. I mean, we leaned a little bit more into hip hop, more R&B. We kind of grew into loving those groups, like you mentioned, the New Jack Style, Mary J. Blige. As soon as Bad Boy hit the stations, we were into all of that. So I think that even though we're Puerto Rican, I think that we kind of grew to love more of the hip hop R&B scene as artists. Now that doesn't mean that if we go to a party or if we throw a party, we're not gonna throw on some salsa, you know what I'm saying, or some reggaeton. We still get down with all of that. We still get down with all of that.
Right.
But as far as artists are concerned, I think we lean more into the R&B culture.
Right. And I wanted to get from each one of you guys, what was it like the first time you guys heard New Edition? Because think about this, 1983, Candy Girl. It was rare to hear rap incorporated in R&B. And if you think about it, we mentioned Force MDs. New Edition was the first R&B group, I think, for me to put rap on wax, mix of R&B, because they were doing the traditional steps like OJ's, Temptations, the Whispers.
Right.
They also had that added element of hip hop because they were part of the first generation of kids to come up on hip hop.
Oh, I wanted to be like them, man. Oh man, even though I was like, man, I ain't no singer, man. I'm not. Right. I can't do that. You know what I mean? But it all evolved into that. They were a major influence. They definitely were an influence.
Yeah.
Especially to me.
So much so that we ended up doing a lot of songs, and when we were performing, Bobby and I, just before we met Larry, actually, because we had a couple of other bands before we formed 4 p.m. But we actually did a lot of stuff like that, right, B? Where we would sing and rap,
absolutely,
in the same song, and so we picked up a lot of influence from New Edition in that respect, and I think a lot of the earlier groups that were coming up were probably doing the same kind of thing.
Right, yeah, and the one group who was heavily influenced by New Edition, they were the West Coast version of them. Their dancing was more hip hop, pop, locking, and I really wish Pop Success would have been bigger for them. Troop, because Troop was no joke.
Oh yeah, Troop was good.
Troop, nice.
Troop had a nice sound, a nice flavor, great harmonies. You know what I mean? Whatever happened to Troop, man? Where they at?
Yeah, Troop. I know they're still out touring. It is Alan, Rodney, Steve, and John. I know Reggie from Troop. He passed away not too long ago. So R.I.P. Reggie Warren. They have a documentary that was just released on YouTube called Tales of a Boy Band, which is definitely a great thing worth watching. And Rodney's nephew, Hit Boy, producer, produced Nas King Disease records. Nas just released King Disease 3 last week. And he actually made a nod to Troop in one of those records. So Troop's legacy still lives on. Of course, all the songs that Steve has written over the years, Gas to Be for B2K, Take You Down, Chris Brown, No Air, Chris Brown, George Start. So the legacy is still out there. So let's talk about the legacy of. Go ahead.
We need you to put us in touch with them before you get. We need you to put us in touch with Troop, man.
All right, so let's talk about the legacy of this Baltimore radio station that is well known, 92Q.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh, 92Q, absolutely.
92Q, man. 92Q. Let me tell you, I think one of the first promo shows that we did was the Harbor Jam. Remember, guys? 92Q hosted the Harbor Jam. And they had the big amphitheater at the Inner Harbor, and they hosted a big thing every summer there. And I think we were just coming out with our record. It was one of the first showcases that we did, and we were on the stage that day with Hammer, Fuji, Aaron Hall was in the building. I mean, you talk about a surreal experience. I mean, it was just crazy. But 92Q has always made sure that they stayed on the pulse of good music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they matter of fact, they were the first station to play our song in Baltimore.
They were.
The first time I ever heard the song on the radio, I was on my way home from somewhere. It came on. I had to pull over, and we just sat back listening to Sukiyaki. You know, because it played,
Actually,
you know, 92
they
Q.
also hosted one of our concerts that we did locally for the high school.
They sure did. We did a local
Yeah.
concert, you know, a show that we would top bill on, and we wanted a good MC, and we called 92Q, and they send one of the MCs out to MC the show.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
was back in the days when radio stations had their own showcases, their summer concerts or winter
That's it.
concerts. And if you were lucky, they would go live from the concert site. So you had
Yeah.
your 120-minute Maxell cassette tape ready to record. Your radio was in the right spot in the house.
Absolutely.
The
That's
antenna
it.
had to be up just right. And this was before digital tuners. So you had to make sure the tune was just right to make sure that there was no
Absolutely.
static. So since
Yeah,
92Q was a big supporter of you guys, were you guys getting the same love in the DMV area from PGC or KISS?
Yeah, we were.
Well,
Yeah,
PGC
absolutely.
gave us a lot of support. STW gave us a lot of support. It was a 96.9.
I think so. There was so many.
96.9, they did with the adult contemporary station in Baltimore too. Gave us a lot of love and support. I mean, I think a hometown didn't do us wrong at all, man. Every single station from Baltimore realized that we were homegrown, and they treated us as such. You know what I mean? So, you know, a lot of times that doesn't happen, but we were fortunate that all of our local stations really got behind us.
Yeah,
much love to them.
Yeah, because I was about to ask, with DC and Maryland being right there, was there any differences musically between the two, even though it's just a nice little short drive? And, you know, we mentioned Go-Go earlier, and Baltimore had Baltimore Club. So it was really where both communities were really supporting each other. Or was it kind of like, okay, we're only sticking with what's going on in DC, and we're only sticking what's going on in Maryland and all the other places around Baltimore?
No, I think
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, Bob.
No, I think both cities definitely supported each other. The only difference is that you go to DC, you would hear both styles, but it would be more, you know, go-go heavy. If you come to Baltimore, it would be more Baltimore house, you know, heavy. But they would infuse a little bit of go-go during the course of the night.
Yeah, mix
But
it.
Definitely
Matter of fact, what's the DJ
scene
Frank?
back then.
Frank, remember Frank? DJ
Frank Ski.
Frank Ski. Frank Ski was very well known, and he ended up doing the Doodoo Brown record, you know.
Yeah.
That came out and exploded, you know. I forget what year that was, but
also you had Miss Tony that did real well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So put your guns
Miss Tony
out.
was at that 92Q Jams
Miss Tony
party as
performed
well,
at the very first show that we did. Miss Tony performed on that too.
Yeah.
Great memories.
Yeah, that Pull Your Guns Out record. I remember hearing that while watching The Corner, which was a prequel to The Wire. And so I kind of got a little bit of taste of Be More Club. And then, as you know, a lot of kids from the DMV area went to school down in the Carolinas and further south. They brought that DMV flavor with them. So you got to hear a lot of that go-go, a lot of that Be More Club, especially since it was so close in driving distance. And I kind of think it was a good thing that after The Butt by EU, Go-Go didn't go national, because it was a regional sound that was known to DC, and then it got put back in the national consciousness thanks to Nelly and Hot in Here, because he sampled Bustin' Loose by Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers.
Yeah. Hey man, you know your music, man.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
You know your music, man. That was all of those were classics, man. All of those are classics.
Great records, classic records. So let's talk about this new single that'll be dropping on December 16th. So explain, how did that come about, and can we expect more from 4 p.m.?
Well, like Ray mentioned, we've always, you know, been writing, and we've since, you know, back when we were, you know, young kids with the previous groups. And recently we went into the vault. We pulled out the notebooks of songs. We pulled out the old cassette tapes, and started listening to old demos. And the first single that you're going to hear, December 16th, is actually a song that we wrote back in 1996. So we had to do a little bit of revamping, remodernizing, bringing it, a little bit more adaptable to the current sound for 2022, listeners and going into 2023. But the story, the melody, the harmonies are classic 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And we hope the fans and the audiences, enjoy it.
I think people are gonna learn how, number one, how ahead of our time we probably were back then as writers, but how timeless the lyrical content is. It's a song about love and relationships and the ups and downs of those relationships. I just tell people it's, that idea that, I love this person, that's my person, but sometimes I love them and sometimes I can't stand them. And that's what some of the time means. Sometimes I love you, sometimes, we don't get along that great, but we're going to fight the good fight. And in the end, we're going to make sure that this relationship is solid. You know what I mean? So we made sure that we, when we're actually shooting this weekend, our video for the song. So we'll have the video coming out the same day as the single, and it's going to be story driven. We got a couple of great a young pair of actors to act out the scenes, to tell the stories. So we look forward to releasing that too, to let the world see what the story is about. Because the story, to me, the song is great, sounds great, but the story is just as powerful. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely looking forward to that. It's going to drop on December the 16th. Now, where can folks reach out to you guys if they want to get in touch with you and also keep connected with updates as far as new music?
Well, you can find us on social media. We're at The Official 4 p.m. That's on Twitter, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. That's our Gmail.
Facebook.
Facebook. It's at The Official 4 p.m.
So definitely keep in touch with them there. If you like positive music that's all about loving your woman, not degrading your woman, not being in that doghouse. If you want to play something to get the mood right, get it right and tight, throw on some 4 p.m. And 4 p.m. is going to turn into 12 a.m. if you know what I mean, if you play your cards right.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
All right. So any shout outs you want to give, guys, before we wrap?
Yeah, man, to all of our fans, everybody that supported us from 95 to today. We're excited to be back. People have been asking for us. We didn't really go anywhere. We've been doing the family thing, but shout out to the fans. We're bringing it. We got a whole LP, a whole album coming out for you, and you'll get all of that early spring, but look out for that first single, December 16th.
Yep, shout out to Jazz Williams, Hookmaster, who is going to be producing a lot of these tracks, and much love.
Yeah. Red Room Recordings, who provided the studio where we recorded, made the magic happen.
Yep, Wilmington, Delaware.
Yep.
All right. And you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and also on YouTube, youtube.com/Beyond the Album Cover, and stay updated with all things related to the podcast, facebook.com/Beyond the Album Cover. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you to Larry, Roberto, and Ray. 4 p.m. Thank you guys for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you.